Hello, I'm Devin, integrative health expert, Ayurvedic health advisor, and holistic coach. Welcome to InnerSpark Living from Your True Nature podcast. This is a resource for those ready to gently, naturally, and sustainably restore their energy, their clarity, their health, and their wholeness. Each episode offers grounded, practical guidance and soul deep insight drawn from nature's wisdom, integrative health, and the timeless principles of Ayurveda. Together, we explore real, sustainable self care, healing from the root and how to actually get there, and dissolving the inner barriers that keep you unwell, depleted, and stuck in survival mode. This is an invitation back home to yourself. And now for today's episode. Hello there. Welcome back to another episode. I am really excited about this one. It's a tender topic and maybe for some of us a little uncomfortable. So, giving you forewarning that we're going to discuss some early life trauma and things of that nature. So, there may be some discomfort with this tender topic. And I believe that that is truly okay. And that discomfort is a powerful doorway that leads us back to the truth, to healing, and to remembering the things that we were never meant to forget. This episode is here to reveal how many of us are trying to heal and grow and thrive on depleted foundations, very depleted foundations. If you garden like I do, you know the importance of soil health. And so trying to get plants to really grow and thrive in depleted soil, it doesn't work. You either get nothing or you get things that are kind of smaller than they should be, less flavorful, less colorful. So many of us are like that. We're trying to heal and grow and thrive on depleted foundations. These foundations that were shaped by early trauma, chronic misattunement, and a lack of true nourishment and processing and digesting of life. And we're going to highlight how this manifests as lifelong exhaustion, disconnection, and the inability to really reach our potential and know ourselves and live in the joy of life. So this is going to help us get to the root of why this is. So as I've shared, there's a root kind of commonality with all of my clients. And it's this deep kind of exhaustion that I call soul exhaustion, soul depletion, that's soul tired. And so if you're here, you've likely been tired for a long time. And it's not just from work or from parenting or life or trying to stay healthy or do the things, but it's like this deep tired from just like being alive. It's not about a busy schedule or even a lack of sleep or just poor nutrition, even though all of those things really matter. They really matter. This is something different, something that's older. And it's this soul depletion that I talked about. It's this kind of weariness that starts when we're very young and it never quite lets go. It's a deep, ongoing malnourishment of body, mind, spirit, and energy. So I want to start with just a little of my own experience because I know how lonely this can feel, and I know that it can kind of be a little bit nebulous feeling. So, as I've shared many times over the years, I grew up in a home that was filled with chaos and addiction, and there was emotional neglect and unprocessed trauma that shaped every part of me. And I was a sensitive, intuitive child, and I never really learned how to truly just be in myself, in my own skin, in the world. Instead, I learned how to perform, how to stay safe by being good by being really hyper vigilant. I learned how to ignore my needs, override my instincts, and just keep going in the name of safety, no matter what. I learned how to be strategic and hyper vigilant and emotionally contained. And this was about keeping peace and staying safe and surviving. You know, just as a deeply personal example, my mental space as a small child was used for things like preparing talking points for the ride home from school, should my mother actually show up to get me, so that she would stay alert and not nod off at the wheel. So I would sit up in bed the night before and prepare talking points like, okay, I can ask these questions or talk about these things, so that I had a list of things prepared to keep her alert and talking so that she wouldn't nod off. And that kind of operating, it takes a toll. It chips away at the nervous system. It chips away at our clarity, at our ability to feel and receive, our ability to feel and receive all the things, nourishment, support, joy, and ease. It prevents us from really seeing clearly. When I'm in this state of hypervigilance and perceiving threats, I'm more easily going to see the threats and perhaps even make some up that aren't true, rather than being in a space of neutrality and actually seeing the truth of what is happening around me. These are the ways that it can show up later in life. And so naturally, as a young person, I developed toxic coping mechanisms, of course. Yet I was really responsible and mature and capable and put together and looked like I was doing really well, even as I was quietly kind of lost and falling apart on the inside. And it wasn't until my early 20s when a series of kind of like back to back crises really cracked me open. Those kinds of things that's just like the world is flipped upside down and the rug is pulled out from under you and you're just like, what the F? What is life? So it was then that I was able to finally see all of these ways of being and these unprocessed things that were living inside of me for what they were, not as a personal failure, but that I was living in a system, a mind body energy system that had been truly overburdened since childhood, that was doing its best to carry the weight of a lifetime of disconnection and depletion and operating in the only ways that it knew how. And yet I saw during those times that those tools, really maladaptive tools that I had developed, weren't going to cut it to get me through that time of my life. It was like, I'm going to die if I keep this way. And so it was die or evolve, heal. And so I embarked on a beautiful journey, and fast forward, this is the very Cliff Notes version. Now we're here today. So seeing that I was deeply malnourished on all levels and super tired, or soul depleted, as I've come to call it. And I also, like I said, recognize this in others. And there's this kind of commonality with the people that have come to me over the years. And it's no accident. We kind of find our our kin, find the ones that have walked similar paths and can support us. So soul depletion. Let's get back on track here. What is soul depletion? I've come to define this as this accumulation of long-term unmet needs. It's what happens when we spend years, more like decades, living in survival mode. disconnected from ourselves and from what's natural, where we're not caring for our daily basic fundamental self-care needs, where we are not processing our emotions or life experiences and more. It's literally just kind of about getting through and surviving. A lot of chaos, a lot of disconnection. And for many of us, like I said, that started in childhood. We were perhaps the caretakers, the peacemakers, the responsible ones. We adapted to stress, chaos, or emotional absence by becoming hypervigilant, perfectionistic, emotionally suppressed. We maybe became like the parents of our own children, or our own children, our the yeah, the parents of our own parents, not our own children. Or maybe we felt like our parents were our children. I know I felt that way with my mother many times. So, right, we became the sort of parentified child. Maybe it was to our parents, to younger siblings, and also this real disconnection from our bodies and our own innate wisdom, the wisdom and intuition that we perceive and access through our body, through our felt senses. So all of this was overridden. And here's something that's important to say and remind us all is that a few things here. One is that you know there's this tendency that I hear. I've done it myself. I hear it with my clients, where we want to like compare belly aches, so to speak. Like, oh, I can't really call what I went through trauma because, and then enter all the reasons why. But I had a roof over my head. I actually had it really well. There was a lot of love. Or I didn't grow up in a war-torn country, so how can I even start to say that I've experienced trauma? All these different ways of kind of minimizing our experience, which is another way of traumatizing ourselves and taking away, discounting our own experiences. There's no hierarchy. There's no spectrum of like when you get to say that you lived through a deeply destabilizing traumatic experience. Everything is completely relative and your own, and it doesn't matter because it's the way that the situation was perceived and experienced in your system and how it's being held and undigested and how it's showing up for you all these years later. So it doesn't matter what it was. There's no comparing here. It's yours and it's your experience. And by minimizing it and kind of wanting to downplay it, you're just, like I said, kind of re-traumatizing yourself. So there's that piece. There's also, this doesn't just happen, this kind of overriding of ourselves. This doesn't just happen in homes that were quote bad or abusive. Soul depletion can form in anywhere. Like we can have different experiences that leave deep imprints on us. So even well-meaning families that were healthy and supportive can pass down lifestyles and beliefs that ignore the body's needs, that glorify self-sacrifice, and that perpetuate disconnection. So from food to sleep to emotional support, many of us were simply never modeled how to tend to ourselves with real presence and care. So we entered adulthood without a foundation. Instead of regulation, we learned repression. Instead of nourishment, we learned performance. And then we grew up. So we essentially, our bodies got bigger, right? Because we're not 6 anymore. But inside, we might still have a big part of that really hurt 6-year-old who's running the show, and now they're just in a big grown-up body that gets to try to do grown-up things. So we're then expected to thrive because we're adults while still living in that same survival patterns that kept us safe as children. We try to be well, but we're trying to grow on exhausted soil. And then we chase productivity, self improvement, and healing modalities, but they're often layered on top of a nervous system that's been in survival mode for a lifetime and simply doesn't have the capacity. A wellness culture sells fixes and band aids instead of foundations, instead of root healing. And we look around and wonder why we're still tired, still stuck, still anxious, still unwell. And then we think that the problem is us. And then we kind of, from all of that, further re-traumatize ourselves. Like, oh, I'm just so broken. I can't do this right, etc., etc. But the truth is, and please hear me, that we've been skipping the root. What couldn't be processed back then becomes energetic backlog. You've heard me say before, it's like this energetic constipation, emotional constipation, old beliefs and imprints, unintegrated stories, undigested emotions. And then without true nourishment and rhythm, the system never has the ability, the capacity to fully metabolize it. And so we're stuck essentially in every single way. And until the system feels safe and nourished, those patterns will keep running the show on very subtle to very overt levels. So every time that we do those things, we're re traumatizing ourselves. We'll talk about that more in just a second. I want to just quickly bring in a little wisdom from Ayurveda here. Because when we're talking about trauma and depletion, we're talking a lot about vata and ojas. So, vata is the air and ether element. Ayurveda recognizes everything as being comprised of 5 elements: ether, air, fire, water, and earth. So, vata is the ether and the air, the space and the air. And vata governs movement, the nervous system, the breath, the subtle energies. And when vata is out of balance, especially chronically, we experience the things that come along with this soul depletion, right? And so as I list these, I invite you to be to recognize what you have felt regularly in your life, slash maybe feel regularly these days. Racing thoughts, anxiety, fear, sleeplessness, loneliness, fragile digestion, chronic fatigue and exhaustion, a sense of feeling scattered, untethered, purposeless. In addition to vata being super high, we're really depleted in the body, but also in our ability to be present, depleted in the mind, our creativity, our energy, our emotions. We're lacking that vital life force energy, that deep contentment and vitality. And this is ojas. When trauma lives in the body, especially from childhood, it creates fragility. The body doesn't feel safe. The mind races. We disconnect from our breath, our center, our rhythm. And this erodes that inner resilience, vitality, our immune system, our cognitive abilities, and our potential. So, like I said, we're less creative, we're less present, we are more susceptible to invasion. So whether we're talking about the physical immune system, we get sick more frequently, or taking on others' energies. That's what I mean by like these foreign invaders that we can just kind of welcome in even when we don't want them. And our energy disperses a lot more easily. Our digestion gets weaker, and we lose access to the part of us that is always actually deeply rooted and whole. So we must bring in stabilization that we never had. That's how we heal. That's how we give ourselves what we've needed all along. So, not more stimulation, not more chasing the things and the fads and trying to fix ourselves, but actually letting all of that go and coming back to a sense of stability, rhythm. Rhythm as containment, as medicine. Rhythm is truly the love language of the nervous system. Without rhythm, we stay in survival mode, primed for the next crisis, primed to react to it, and kind of never relax, never surrender, staying in that hyper vigilant place. That's that's that survival mode without rhythm. So just to recap this cycle, here's how it kind of plays out. All right. We experience early depletion. We're never taught how to care for ourselves. We grew up depleted and disconnected without being modeled good, foundational, rhythmic self care. We grow up, we're little kids in adult bodies, thinking there's things wrong with us. So we chase the fixes and the trends and the healings, but we're still overriding that root cause, that foundation. And then we unknowingly repeat the same survival strategies, and on it goes. This is the soul depletion cycle. And without realizing it, we re-traumatize ourselves every single day through how we treat ourselves. So when we skip meals, when we push through fatigue, when we shame ourselves for needing rest, for example, when we don't stop and take care of ourselves when we're sick, when we obsess over productivity and think that our value lies in what we're doing and achieving, when we numb instead of feel, when we downplay our experiences and downplay our emotions, when we kind of gaslight ourselves, oh, it's not that bad. All of this and more, we continue the very same treatment and modeling that we once received. But now we're doing it to ourselves. And it couldn't be any other way because we didn't learn a different way. And now we can. We don't have to reinforce the patterns that created and contribute to this sense of soul depletion. We can break the cycle and choose to remember that something different is possible. So there's nothing wrong with you. You were never broken. All of these things that I know I've said to myself and that I have heard from countless clients over the last, goodness, decade. You were simply never shown how to care for yourself in a way that's rhythmic, rooted, and real. You weren't taught how to show up with compassion and gentleness and kindness and responsiveness, openness. You weren't taught how to align with nature. You weren't taught how to honor your system, how to love yourself as a living being and not a machine with expectations placed upon it, this kind of conditional love. You can choose differently now. You can choose rhythm and nourishment and relationship with yourself, with nature, and with what's real. You can choose to reconnect with the wisdom of nature and to establish a foundation of care for yourself that meets and honors those daily core needs of whole foods nourishment regularly, rest, breath, movement, and reflection. These are the 5 core foundational needs. These are the rhythms that regulate and nourish and stabilize. And from there, healing is possible. Deep, transformational, sustainable, lasting healing. So we nourish and we stabilize, and that really lets the soil be what it was meant to be. That stability that I talked about in the beginning of the episode today, that I talk about every day, all the time. Tattoo it to my forehead. Stability is what heals. And this is how we interrupt that cycle and bring greater rhythm and presence and let go of all the rest. So, as we close for today, I want to offer a few invitations for reflection. I'll put these in the show notes, and yeah, I invite you to sit down with a journal and let yourself really reflect here. Where in my life do I feel like I'm running on E? And where does that story begin? What early beliefs or adaptations might still be shaping how I care for myself today? And how's that working out for me? What would it look like to choose gentle rhythm over hustle? Just for today, just try it on. And lastly, what parts of you were neglected or suppressed that now need tending? You don't need to change everything overnight, but you can begin. Bring in those little cues of consistency, of rhythm, of stability. And that alone is revolutionary, and it will compound. And you'll want to take another step and another and another. Let your rhythm be your healer. Let your breath be your anchor. And let your remembrance of the fact that you are whole and amazing and sacred be your liberation. You are worthy of that and so much more.